Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. It is a very special town hall live stream. And I want to start us off with a story. And you're going to think at first that this has nothing to do with the topic of tonight, which is AI and AI in the courts. But it's really important. And I think you'll see how it all connects up when I finish with the story. So I live in Georgia, and back in 1998, we had a hotly contested election for lieutenant governor. Now, Georgia at that time was pretty close to a one-party, Democrats-only state for a century. But there were the first cracks beginning in that previously completely ironclad fact. And at that time, Mitch Scandalakis threw his hat in the ring as a Republican candidate for lieutenant governor. Now, the Democrat in the race was Mark Taylor. He was particularly recognizable because he was a large dude, so much so that he campaigned as the big guy. It was a very hotly contested race, like I said, and it turned negative as the election drew closer and closer. So one night I was shocked out of my TV chair, along with the rest of the state, by an ad against Mark Taylor. It looked like surveillance video in a darkened hospital corridor. A big guy was shuffling and stumbling down the hall at what supposedly was Ridgeview Institute, which is a psychiatric and drug treatment facility in our area. I tried really hard to find this video for you so I could show it to you. I could not find it on the internet. But so by now, my memory of this is from, I guess it was 25 years ago. So I'm getting as close to it as I can. So the ad's very clear suggestion was that Mark Taylor had drug problems or some kind of significant mental, but probably drug problems, and he had been hospitalized at Ridgeview. It was a devastating blow to his campaign. I could not imagine how he could go on to win the election after that, except that it was also apparently totally untrue. There were rumors about Mark Taylor and drugs, but apparently that's all there were, just rumors. And the big guy in the ad that we all watched on our TV screens, that wasn't Mark Taylor at all. It was a paid actor. And Mark Taylor had not been treated at Ridgeview. So Mark Taylor filed a lawsuit against Mitch Scandalakis, a $1 million lawsuit. And they later ended up settling it with Mitch Scandalakis agreeing to give $50,000 to a charity. The ad backfired pretty spectacularly. Republicans fared terribly across the state on election day, including Scandalakis, who lost by a landslide. We tend to think of AI as brand new, and in its present form, it is new. It is very different from anything we've experienced or known before. But deep fakes are not new. And the video of a paid actor with a body shape like Mark Taylor's was an earlier version of what we are going to experience today. It's proof of that biblical injunction that there is nothing new under the sun. So when we talk about how we're going to deal with AI and how we're going to deal with deep fakes inside the justice system, we aren't talking about something that's entirely new. We do have rules and procedures in place in the court system. We just have to figure out how they're going to apply. And we have to find out when they're going to apply and whether maybe we need new ones as well. So because the scope of what we're facing now is dramatically different, it dwarfs anything that we've dealt with before, AI is going to invade every last corner of the justice system, from discovery to legal arguments to evidence. Also, the access is dramatically different right now because anyone can have access to AI. So there are a lot of questions we're going to get into tonight, ranging all the way from fake evidence to literally the possibility of replacing judges with AI. And I want to approach tonight by, instead of just, talking, because I'm not sure how easily that even we could do, but I want to tell some stories about real life cases that involve questions around AI. I am very interested in this topic and I want to do more with it on the channel. I need your help, though, to do that. First of all, I need your help. If you see a case or an issue that comes up, please send it to me. And tonight, what I would like us to do is be very interactive. I want your thoughts because I'm just now thinking through it too. I mean, like the entire justice system, I don't think we can pretend that we have answers yet. But we are in a race to get those answers because things are moving so incredibly quickly. And the legal system is always slow to respond to anything. So tonight, here's the format. I'm going to tell a story. These are real stories. These are not fake. And I want to do a couple of polls after each one. And while you're answering, I'm also going to read your comments and then we can talk about those. So that's the way I was thinking we can make it kind of interactive. Now, we've got a smaller group tonight. Would you please do this? Would you hit the like button to let YouTube know, hey, we're awake, we're out here, we're talking about a subject that is really important and is going to have an impact on all of us as we move forward. So if you would hit the like button, I would really appreciate it. If you would also subscribe. If you aren't yet a member, we'd love to have you. So special shout out to our first 5 in tonight's chat, which is Betsy Sue, Desert Rose, Bex in Wonderland, Susie Q, and Sky Goddess 87. And special shout out to our mods who are both in the house. So let me tell you story number 1, okay? Jerome DeWald had brought a lawsuit against his former employer. And he lost in the trial court. So he was now appealing. He filed a request to pre-record a video presentation to assist with his argument. So it's his turn. He's about to stand up and he cues up a video of a young man, and Jerome is 74. So this is a young man. And may I say hats off to him that he could do this. So Jerome is 74. And this young man starts with, in this video, may it please the court, I come here today, a humble pro se before a panel of 5 distinguished justices. Now that had to have been incredibly confusing to the court because the pro se person just stood up and queued up his video, and yet the person in the video is saying they are the pro se person. Pro se just means a person representing themselves without an attorney. So the justices think they're looking at an attorney for him, but none of this is making any sense to them. So one of the justices says, well, hold on, is that counsel for the case? Is that your lawyer, basically? And DeWald tells them that he generated it, that what they're watching is not a real person. He generated it to make the argument for him. He said he thought it would be more fluent that way. If he did it personally, he would get up there, he would stumble, he would make errors that an avatar would not. So the court, though, was furious. And I don't appreciate being misled, was what one of the justices said to him. So to a couple of points about this, the avatar did not claim to be an attorney. And DeWald did disclose that he generated the person, although he did not say that until he was asked about that. So I want to ask a couple of questions. I'm going to have to open up a different screen so I can ask y'all a set of polls. So give me just a second. And I think I have to go to right here. Give me just one more second as I pull it up. Okay, so I have to navigate through my screens here. Okay, here we go. So, all right, I want to start with this question and see what you think. We'll start with a poll. Start a poll. Is it okay to have an AI attorney? Just in general, like, what do you think? And we're going to do yes, no, and then I'm going to add a couple of options. Must be limits, and then I'm going to add one, it depends. All right, so I'm going to start that poll and see what y'all are thinking about this, and then I want to talk a little bit about it. So this is going to be just kind of we'll kick off with this, and then we'll get into another question under this, and then we're going to keep moving through our stories. So I've got 3 stories to tell you to kind of shape what we're talking about. All right, so okay. Let me see how y'all are responding so far. Okay, so we've got votes on both sides, but I would say y'all are leaning one way. But if you look at it closely, okay, so y'all are voting. It's changing somewhat as we go into it. So I don't want to say what it is. I want to just keep talking for a minute about what the topic is, because with an AI attorney, of course, there are things you're going to give up. There are things you're going to give up related to what the person's experience is, their knowledge, their training, their legal education, right? And those things you're going to be giving up if you don't have an attorney. There are also some things that you might gain. And I'm going to go ahead and let the poll go for another maybe minute, and then I'm going to shut it down. If you're watching the video back, first of all, thank you. Thank you for being here. You will not be able to participate in the poll, but I'll read out what our result was. One way you can participate, even though not technically in the poll, please put your answers in the comment section. The whole reason I'm doing this video is I really want your opinions about this. I feel like this is one of the 2 biggest issues that the legal system is going to grapple with in the next few years, and definitely the next decade or 2. This and the other one is social media and the influence social media has on cases, on juries, on decisions that are made. And I don't think the legal system is grappling with either one of those things. So this is, to me, hugely, hugely important. So I'm about to shut this down because I want to go ahead and have the answer to this one before we go to our second one, and I want to talk a little bit about it. So I'm about to shut it down. Lock in your votes. Quick, quick, quick. Okay, I'm about to end the poll. And I think I did. There we go. Okay, so here's how you voted. 61% of you said no, it should not be okay to have an AI attorney. 14% of you said, well, there need to be some limits. And 13% of you said it depends. And 12% said yes. So if you look at the limits, depends, and yes together, these are all people who thought maybe there might be times when that would be possible. So that was 39% to 61% saying an absolute no. And I'm going to tell you, that was my first response too. That was the first thing I was thinking was, no, you can't have an AI attorney. That's ridiculous. And there are some huge things you're going to miss out. For one thing, the justices or the judges like to ask the person who's arguing, they like to ask questions. And if it's AI, you may not be able to flex around that as easily. So obviously, that's pretty important. Another huge issue is you don't have accountability to the court. The AI isn't subject to sanctions. You can't disbar AI, right? All of those things happen based on what the actual person in front of the court is doing. But I want to argue the other side because, hey, that's what lawyers do, right? So what if it's a pro se defendant or a pro se plaintiff, doesn't matter really, or it's a criminal defendant, and they're going to get poor representation unless they use AI. I mean, imagine this. Every defendant in the world could snap her fingers, and suddenly have Alan Jackson arguing their case. Alan Jackson, of course, being Karen Reed's attorney. Or they could just say, yep, I want Camille Vasquez, Johnny Depp's attorney. Maybe not use their image, but software that would make arguments like Camille Vasquez would, like Alan Jackson would. I mean, just kind of think about that. Should defendants, particularly, but also plaintiffs, have the right to an AI attorney if that's what they want? And so I want to turn it around a little bit. Instead of asking, is it okay to have this? I want to ask, should there be a right to that? Now, in general, we allow a defendant to select counsel, but we have never allowed a defendant to select AI as a counsel, right? And also the court will appoint someone, and the defendant doesn't have complete freedom in who that is. There will be limits on that. All right, so let me do another poll on this, and I'm going to ask you what you think about that. AI attorneys a right? I'll add the word are. Are AI attorneys a right, or should they be? Yes, no, and we'll do the same thing. Must be limits, and it depends. So now that you've thought about kind of the other argument, the other side of it, what do you think? Does this change anything for you? Do you think it ought to be, are you moved by that? Do you think maybe, yeah, possibly, should it be a right? And while y'all are answering that, I'm going to pop in over here and read through your questions. Jody talking about the water and electricity required by it, the environment. Then you'd have to have AI on the prosecution side, then we'll be governed by AI, says Sylvia. That's a really interesting argument, Sylvia. That's a really good point. Sarah Boone needs an AI attorney randomizer, says Ann B. That might help. I'm sure she would complain, though. AI just doesn't know enough. Yes, I'm sure she would quickly ask to be appointed a new counsel. All right. Yeah, so my neuropsych is talking about Lori Vallow, and so is S Cipher 777. She represented herself in a case. She actually did pretty well, I thought, but it was pretty weak. I don't think you could have gotten less of a defense than she got in Idaho, and she had counsel for that. So I thought she did more for herself. She had actually made arguments and so forth that we were able to see. Obviously, some stuff was done behind the scenes. All right, so I'm taking a look at what y'all are writing. Save a lot of money on legal fees. That's the truth. That's not an argument. Now, who said that? I was going to read who it was. These are popping through here for me. So, all right, let me switch over here, because I saw somebody say, and I do agree with that, it could save a lot of money, because right now our taxpayers pay two sets of attorneys. We pay for the prosecutor, and then in a criminal case, and that's mostly what we cover here, we also pay for the attorney for the defense if the person is indigent, meaning they can't afford it. And almost always in a big case, if the person was not indigent when they went in, they will be by the time they get to trial. So it's extremely rare for there to be anything that would be really specific at that point. So Annie K, this is Twilight Zone stuff. How about appeals and wrong answers, etc.? And Annie, you're right. And that's one of the issues I was talking about, where there's not accountability, right? If an attorney files a brief and it's not researched well, it used AI and fake citations, well, then the attorney can be sanctioned. The attorney can be removed from the case. The attorney can be reported to the bar. But what do you do with AI? Do you report it to Meta? I'd like to report that, you should be disbarred. I mean, it's not a member of the bar. It's not a person. So it doesn't really have the same sort of requirements. It doesn't make sense. You can't punish it. You can't reach it and make it act a certain way. You don't have control over it in that sense. And that's one of the scary things about it. Pascaline is saying, isn't it a legal vacuum? Yes, entirely a legal vacuum. And that is exactly the problem. And I think I saw over here that Pascaline has been a member for 3 months. Pascaline is joining us from Paris, hence her bonjour, cher lawyer Lee, which I butchered in accent, but I got your message. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Hit that like for Lee channeling her inner Mama Pinks today. Well, Mama Pinks, along with Marlon, are our moderators, and I'm very appreciative of that. And Mama Pinks has been a member for 20 months, so thank you so much. Much appreciated. This is a great point that Tammy makes. Would the prisons be the biggest to use AI lawyers? That's a really great point. I don't know how much access they will have to AI or to AI lawyers. If that's allowed, if they have enough access to computer systems and that sort of thing, that's a really good point, because prisoners file a large number of suits related to their treatment, medical treatment, all kinds of things like that. So could well be that could be a place where it gets used. All right, let's head over here and see. We've gotten pretty many votes. I'm going to lock it down in just a minute. So I'm about to end the poll. Lock in your votes. Last votes. Okay. All right. So here is what y'all have said. It'll pop up in just a minute. Are AI attorneys right? 54% of you say no. That means that another 46% of you voted with the must be limits, or yes, or it depends. So you're open to it. You're open to the idea. I hope that the courts will rule that there are not absolute rights to an AI attorney, but I think that's the kind of thing that we have to think through a little bit, because I can understand where it would be better for some defendants and in some circumstances than what they're actually permitted. But that is a failure of the system and not really an argument for breaking the wall and allowing AI to come in. I just cannot see a way that can be controlled if you allow that. So my personal opinion. All right, so let's start our second story. Okay, you ready? So I was, and some of you hopefully saw my video last week, I was researching the Melody Buzzard case. Missing. Her mom has been taken into custody, but still missing. And I came across a YouTube channel showing an avatar that looks like the director of the FBI, Kash Patel. Now, the titles of the videos in this channel mention Kash Patel, his actual name, mention the FBI, make statements about cases that are pending and in which the FBI is involved. And you cannot tell from the description or the words in any one video that this is AI. But if you go to the channel description, there it states plainly that this is generated. It's not Kash Patel. It's not the FBI. Kash Patel didn't say any of these things, and it says that. But it's not clear from any one video that this is what's happening. So, I do want to do a definition from Google. A deepfake is not just something that's done for malice. Here's what Google said. A deepfake is a synthetic video, photo, or audio recording created using AI and deep learning to make it appear real, but which shows someone saying or doing something they never did. These manipulated media can be used for malicious purposes like spreading disinformation, blackmail, and fraud, but also have legitimate applications in areas like entertainment. Now, I think this is coming. Applications and videos of what could have happened in a case could be incredibly powerful. And I believe they will probably start mostly on the civil side. They will move to the criminal side, and they will be hard fought there. And in fact, there's already been one example, and that is what I want to talk about next. Christopher Pelkey is the first murder victim in history to testify at the sentencing hearing of his own killer. So to make it clear, he testified after he had been shot, after he had been killed. Now, this is what happened. Gabrielle Horcasitas shot Pelkey in a road rage incident in Chandler, Arizona in 2021. Now, Pelkey got out of his car and came toward Horcasitas. And Horcasitas took out a gun, shot and killed Pelkey. Pelkey was not armed, according to police. So Horcasitas was convicted of manslaughter, and he was being sentenced. The part that pertains to AI came at sentencing. Now, Pelkey, being dead, could not testify, but his sister was tech savvy enough that she was able to create an avatar of him talking and giving his own victim impact statement in his own case. And the avatar announced right away what was going on, said, I'm a version of Chris Pelkey recreated through AI that uses my picture and my voice profile. The AI version of Chris Pelkey offered, very generous words, offered forgiveness, but the judge specifically said, yeah, he loved it. He thanked the sisters, and I really liked that. I really liked being able to see him. And he sentenced the defendant to the statutory maximum of about 10 years. So in my view, there are some serious problems with using deepfakes to present evidence. The most important, I think, is that the person who made the AI is not the person who supposedly is making the statement. So to me, that's hearsay, because this person, the sister, is saying what Pelkey would have said, but we don't know what Pelkey would have said. He's not here. He's not here to say it himself. It's her words and coming out of someone else's mouth. We can't cross-examine Pelkey. He didn't actually say these things. We don't actually know that he thought these things. So as I'm going to do another poll, and I want to ask kind of an open-ended question while we're doing this. In your opinion, is this a beautiful use of technology, or would you call this just kind of exceedingly creepy, as Dr. Todd Grande would put it? Which would you say, beautiful use of technology or just exceedingly creepy? And while you're writing some comments on that, I'm going to start us up a poll, and I'm going to ask, let me add one other thing. The reason why it was more clearly allowed in this case, and by the way, there wasn't an objection and probably should have been, but if the reason it's a little bit different, a lot of times statements at a sentencing hearing are not under oath. They are victim impact statements. This is different from evidence presented in court where there are rules around it. So this is something different. This is sentencing, and the rules are laxer. There are not the same requirements. There's not a jury. The decision is about how much time will be spent, not whether the person is guilty. Okay, so let's start a poll, and I'm going to ask you, should courts allow AI at sentencing? AI, I guess I'll say statements. And I'll add an option for you lawyers out there. I know how we are. We'll have yes, no, and then we'll say it depends. Okay, and because I know it's going to be really hard for you to answer that. That is how we are as attorneys. We kind of can't help it. Okay. Thank you, Christine. That was a very kind comment. Oh, Betsy Sue points out it may not save taxpayers money because we'll have to fund the technology to pay the humans. I guess the theory is it ought to be cheaper for that, but you have a good point. You definitely do still have to fund that. I'm kind of behind, so I'm going to go on down to the bottom so I can look at whether y'all have made any comments about that. Quirky thinks it's exceedingly creepy. So does Bama Queen. So I want a real person. I kind of feel the same way. I know that people do this with a loved one when a loved one passes sometimes, and I imagine that's what the sister did. And I don't think there was anything wrong with what she did. I personally, as a judge, probably would not have allowed it in, but then there was no objection. So they presented this and he listened. And that's typically the way a sentencing hearing goes. It's a lot freer, right? The judge isn't heavily involved in policing it. There aren't rulings, and it's pretty rare to get an objection, really. This was not just a little bit, this was way different from anything that had happened before. So, all right, let's take a look and let's see. It depends on the use, says Rich Auntie. I want a real person, says Idaho Spud Girl. That would be nice. Chris Collins is okay with speech to text. So that makes sense, right? I certainly use that all the time, although it almost never gets it right. It comes out all crazy. All right, let's see. You know what? I didn't hit it. Oh, good. It's still in. Okay. So here's what I would like. If you want me to take a look at it, if you're doing a comment based on what I said or a question, would you mind putting question marks in at the beginning? That way I'll know specifically to look for that. Annie K is talking about the question we were going to get into the very next, which is, this is not just an issue of sentencing, right? This is an issue that then moves into things like fake witnesses. What about that? Do you have to disclose them? Could you just put on a fake witness who describes what it would be like, as long as you tell everybody, well, this is just describing what could have happened. It's reasonable. It seems like that's a possibility. Can you do that? And what if you don't even disclose it at all? Would there be sanctions? Should the lawyer get in trouble for that? And same is true with just regular evidence like documents or something like that. Yeah, I agree with you, Annie K. Those are all huge questions. All right, let's see. We are getting a strong vote on this one, with which I would agree. And I think most commentators did. I honestly don't think the judge probably thought long and hard about this. I think he was probably very surprised by the presentation of this. It was very emotional. It was sudden. No one objected, and he listened and reacted in the way that most people would. And that is why it is so powerful and so dangerous, which I think most people would look at what happened or would look at the person, what was in front of them. And when you add the visual to what you're hearing orally through audio, when you add those two, it is just more powerful because you are seeing with your own eyes. And ultimately, I think where this is going to be pushed right up to the edge is we are going to have recreations of, for example, a crime. And the prosecution is going to want to put on its recreation of the crime in which this very defendant goes in and murders somebody. Or maybe they won't go quite that far. Maybe it'll just be that they put in a person not completely identified as the defendant, but they show the crime happening the way they believe it happened. And then you're going to have a big problem with the defense, because the defense is not going to have the money to counter that. So then we'll have to pay for the defense to have a similar sort of AI that it will present the defense argument about what happened. So it's going to be wild, I think. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. We got pretty many votes in. If you haven't voted, lock it in quick. Okay, so we're going to end that. And what you said was overwhelmingly, you do not think that courts should allow AI statements at sentencing. 70% of you said no. And 23% of you said it depends or yes. And that means about 30% of you are open to that idea in some form. You may not totally have finished that out. But yes, I think I'm going to look through here and see where there's some more questions in the meantime. Pascaline asked, avatars at sentencing are used frequently? No, it's been done once that I know about, once that has been reported on. So first of all, I don't really think we had the technology to have done this even a year ago. I think this is brand new. And the cases we're talking about are, old, like May. So this is all brand new, and we're going to be figuring this out as we go. That's why I think what we're doing tonight is really important. We are actually talking about, where is this whole system going to go? How are we going to approach this? Because Lawyers haven't figured it out. It isn't like the court systems know exactly what's going to happen. Things will happen like what happened with this judge with the avatar. They're just going to be confronted with this in court, no planning, no expectation, and they're going to be trying to figure out on the fly what to do. And then there will ultimately be appeals and that sort of thing. So it'll begin to be worked out over the next few years. Okay, let's see. Let's go to our next poll question. And I mostly just want you to kind of think through this because should the judge consider the AI avatar's opinion? Isn't that the craziest thought? Is that, and I'll give you a yes or no, or for all the lawyers, I'm adding and it depends because I understand. Okay, and I don't have a question mark at the bottom at the end of that. My grandmother would have been appalled. She taught grammar to middle schoolers. So you can bet that there was zero tolerance for grammar errors in our family as I was growing up. So, okay. So, add this to it. When the avatar got up there, appeared before the judge, the avatar was saying, let's show mercy. Well, should the judge follow that? Because it wasn't really Pelkey asking for that, right? It was Pelkey's sister channeling what she believed he would say. So it's just super awkward. I think y'all are going to vote pretty much heavily in one side. So I also want to ask this question. I'm not going to leave that one up too long. So go ahead and vote quickly on that. Because I think y'all will heavily agree. In fact, y'all are still voting. I'll give you just a second to finish up on that. But the next question I'm going to ask you is, I think, going to be harder. And this opens an entire can of worms. Huge questions around this, but I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Okay, so you were pretty much all on one side. And as soon as it pops up, I'll tell you what the numbers were, but it takes just a second. Taking a really long second here. Oh, here we go. No, that was the original one. I don't know where it went. It hasn't popped up. Well, here it is. Okay. 87% of you said no, the judge should not consider the opinion of the AI avatar. And 9% of you said it depends. 4% of you said yes. So 13% of you were open to it in some way. 87% agreed no. And I would have to fall, at least for now, on that side, because I do think it's hearsay and it's not really the opinion of that person. So it wouldn't really make sense to follow it, if you see what I'm saying. So, but here, I think this is going to be, I don't know how y'all will vote on this. I am really curious. Okay, so here's the question I want to ask you. Okay, who should control whether a victim is digitally recreated? And our choices are going to be family, or prosecutors, or the court, or no one. In other words, don't do it. Okay, so I'm going to start that poll and see what y'all think. I think this might be a little harder because, okay, if you start to think about it, if the family is who controlled it in this case. I hit my microphone, but it's okay. We're still there, I think. So the family controlled it in this case, but what if the prosecutor wanted to do it? What if the prosecutor said, I think it will really help me get the sentence that I think would be just. So I'm going to recreate the person's avatar to speak to the court. You can just see where there just seems like something funny about that, right? I mean, it just doesn't seem right. And then there's maybe the court should do it, but that just doesn't seem right either. It just seems really hard to figure out, which is why I think we have a large portion of you moving into the fourth category right now, which is like, okay, we're going to have to stop this because we don't know. How are we going to figure out who should be doing this? Okay, I see I missed a few questions. I'm not going to be already able to do it. Wow. Now, Mama Pinks is talking about a case that I haven't covered and won't cover tonight, but related to AI feeding someone's delusions and suggesting that they commit a crime. And clearly, that's about as disturbing as it gets. So, thank you, Mama Pinks, for your point. And I have heard about a case similar to that. Okay, so we're going to end this poll. And sorry if I cut it off a little abruptly, but what about 68% of you are saying, no, just don't recreate it. This should have nothing to do with the court. The court is saying 20% of you said, well, the court should be in charge of an avatar, or if that's needed. 12% of you said the family, and literally 0% of you said the prosecutor. So that seems fair. I would agree with you on that. Okay. I personally would fall on the no one because I just can't see how you even begin to figure something like that out. I do really picture this as being hearsay, and I think some of our regular rules around hearsay would address this. I mean, we don't let people come in and pretend to be witnesses, like, to take it to an absurd level. We wouldn't let a family member come in, dress up like the victim, and say, this is what the victim would have said. We wouldn't let anybody do that. We would say, you can't testify for them. They have to testify for themselves. But obviously, this is a little bit different because it's during sentencing as opposed to during the case and the presentation of the facts and the evidence to the jury. All right. So I really do believe the real test of this is going to start with the idea that people will come to the court and they'll say, Judge, all we're trying to do is present demonstrative aids to help the jury understand. That's it. That's all we want to do. And then it's going to move further and further, and it's going to be harder and harder to contain. So I think the courts are going to have to draw the line. No testimony ever from AI. I think they have to do that. But they are going to have to be, I would draw the line probably like way back up here, but we'll see what the courts do. Okay, so our last story for tonight is, do we even need judges? Okay. According to, and this is less of a story than just kind of describing something that's happened. Now, according to an article by a Pennsylvania attorney, Oliver Lee Bateman, it's not a new idea to replace judges with AI. Now, there have been internet reports that Estonia is rolling out an AI that would take care of, resolve disputes that were small claims that weren't too big. Now, Estonia, I actually read a statement by the Estonian government saying that is false. We want to streamline court processes, but we are not looking at robotic judges. We're not doing that. So according to LexisNexis, though, China is doing that. It's using AI non-human judges, according to Lexis, and they are deciding what Lexis called millions of disputes, which seemed really high. But I think a lot of Americans might be horrified at it, but in a lot of ways, we do already use it. As Bateman argues in his article, judges use algorithms to calculate sentences. And we don't really know exactly what gets fed into those, but we rely on those. Judges rely on them, and data is put in and outcomes are recommendations. So I want to ask you about this. I want to ask you about, would you trust an AI judge to handle small claims. And I'll say less than $5,000. And I'll do a yes, no, and our option for all the lawyers in the group is it depends. Okay. We'll always have that for you. I understand. Okay. I'm sure I would always be putting in it depends if I were doing this. Although I don't know. I have opinions on some of these, pretty strong opinions. So we'll see. So the question is, would you trust an AI judge to handle small claims cases? And okay, so I'm behind on looking at your questions and stuff. Oh, thank you, Shiroshina. I'll pop that up. Thank you. She loves how I'm thinking and considering this. And I don't think we have a choice. I mean, thank you. I'm very honored, but I really am fascinated by this. I think this is really, really important. And let me go back a little bit, see, did I miss any questions? Here's one from Stan saying, yes, Stan is talking about a case where a member of the deceased family read a letter allegedly from the deceased that the family member actually had written. That would be, and that, Stan, you may be remembering the one we're talking about, but you're talking more specifically about a letter. And typically, I would think most courts wouldn't allow that. The person can make a victim impact statement, but that's not that does not include writing letters for other people who aren't present. Now, they might write a letter. Someone might read a letter from somebody else saying, this was a letter written by, the sister, and she's asked me to read it for her today. We saw some of that in Brian Kohberger's sentencing. But to literally write the letter for the other person, that normally wouldn't be allowed. Another point would be, these are victim impact statements, and you could argue that what they normally are supposed to do is show how people were impacted by what happened. Ironically, of course, the person most affected by it is, in Pelkey's case, Pelkey, and he wasn't able to testify. So sort of an unrepresented victim in most cases. Okay, so and Pascaline, Katie W wants to ask Kim K her opinion. Well, yes, maybe she would have an opinion. I don't know. She may have lots of opinions about this. I would think, to be honest, most lawyers sure should be thinking about this sort of stuff. I think they definitely should be. And Scar Motley in me says AI harm few consider or know about is environmental. And I think Scar Motley, someone else mentioned that earlier in tonight. That is an issue, right? How much we use up in the way of resources with AI. So obviously that is something we have to think about. Now, Pascaline has a couple of questions for us, and thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. Legally, is AI considered as a human creation or a computer creation? I mean by that, AI could get a legal status. Interesting question, Pascaline. And I'm sure counsel use AI for their daily work. Yeah, should this part also be regulated? Okay, let's start with what she was asking about first. Is it a human creation or a computer creation? And I would say you would have to say it's both, right? It comes right in the middle of that, because it could not exist if it weren't for all the input of humans from across the internet, and that gets fed into the computer system. So what humans know, what humans have done, is the sort of the giants on which AI stands. And that's how AI is able to do something. But then it is a computer. So it's sort of a hybrid, I would say. I don't think they ought to give it legal status as what exactly, right? That's such an interesting question. Would it be a hybrid person? I would say no. I would say no legal status. Now, as for counsel using it for daily work, I am absolutely sure that is happening. And it's not regulated at all, Pascaline, in the US, other than this. Lawyers are told they better not file briefs that have AI hallucinations for cases, because that was happening. At least it happened a number of times, and lawyers would file something, that looked like a real cite to a real case. So they are citing to Jones v. Smith, and that says, quote, or that says, and they would explain to the court what the holding was. The problem was there was no Jones v. Smith. That was all invented. None of that actually happened. And so that creates huge problem, right? And the courts, because then the courts may rely on it. They may make decisions based on that. They may not go behind the attorneys and read the cases. So it created a lot of trouble, and courts came down very hard on those attorneys. Okay, so let's stop that poll. And y'all are pretty strong on this one. 76% of you say you would not trust an AI judge to handle small claims. There are 24% of you who are open to it, at least a little bit. 14% of you said it depends, and 10% said yes, you would. I would not be surprised if we end up having AI judges for small claims. I can picture something like that happening. But let's ask, and tell you what, just put some comments in and put question marks at the beginning so I'll know that it's a comment about this. Do you believe AI judges should ever be allowed to decide guilt or innocence of a person, as opposed to a small claims, which is just civil, just financial? Do you think that should ever happen? Meanwhile, I'm going to start another poll. And this one is going to be, what do you think is more dangerous? Do you think human bias or I'm going to have trouble saying this. Hold on. Bias or algorithmic bias? Okay. And so here's what you can say. You can say human or algorithmic. And okay. All right. Let's see what you think. I'm actually pretty curious on this one. And I'm not going to say anything about that, but I am going to go over and look at your comments on the question that I'd asked. So let's see. And hopefully you put question marks at the beginning, because that'll make it easier to spot. Okay. Stan saying, in the Lori Vallow sentencing, when Kay read a victim impact statement written from the perspective of JJ. Oh, wow. What a great point. Trauma JJ experienced before his death, including the loss of his father in school. Great point, Stan. That is a really, really good point. That has happened. That is actually an excellent point. And probably a lot of courts would not permit that. I mean, courts tend to give a lot of latitude to the families during sentencing, because they know that the system is set up so that there's a lot of focus on the defendant and all of the proof and protecting the defendant's rights. And the families get shut out of that. And then finally they have their chance to say something. So courts do allow some latitude there, but that's a really good point, Stan. That's a really good one. Okay, looking for quite a lot of no's on that. Annie K had a question about what laws are needed immediately. Well, that's what we're figuring out. I don't know. I don't know what laws are needed immediately, but I think there have to be some around the protection of people's images. There are not right now protections for just ordinary folks. There are protections, ironically, for Kash Patel. You can't just impersonate the director of the FBI. You can't impersonate government officials. And so if they wanted to do something, if they felt like it was an infringement, they would have some legal protections, but you and I don't. So I would say that's where I think there has to be some legislation pretty quickly around that. Pascaline wants to know, if you recognize an AI bias, don't you recognize ipso facto a legal status to AI? So Pascaline is asking some really probing questions here. Pascaline is saying, well, if AI can be biased, doesn't that mean it maybe has legal status? I think the courts are going to say no, Pascaline. I think they're going to refuse to give it any kind of special status. But they may not have to in order for it to kind of make its way into the courtroom. It may not have to be called something specific to still have an impact. So that's just my theory, but we will find that out in the coming months. Let's see what y'all are voting on. Okay, we got 7. All right, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. So 70% of you think that algorithmic bias is more dangerous than human. I agree with that, 70% to 30. I agree with you because we can't really change or affect algorithmic. With human. Maybe you could at least appeal to the person. Maybe you can at least reach some connection on a human basis. But if it's stuck in the algorithm, we can't find it. We can't touch that. We can't alter it. And that seems really scary to me. All right, so this will be our last poll for the night. I'm going to start this one. Not typing, there we go. If AI could eliminate backlog and cost, would you accept it? And I mean in the justice system, but I don't have room to put all that. So y'all have to just kind of guess that from what I'm saying. And I'm looking at these going, oh, my grandmother would not approve. That's a misspelling. Have to be really careful. Okay, so we're going to do yes. We're going to do yes, no, and of course, our usual lawyerlee, it depends. Okay. All right, there we go. So what I'm kind of getting at here is, do you think the fact that AI might be more efficient at handling cases, it might can move faster, or it might could do it more cheaply, would that influence the way you feel? Would you maybe start to loosen up, allow it a little bit more if you thought it would really make an impact on clearing case law backlog or in saving society money? What would you think about that? So that's where I'm kind of asking. So we are tonight literally scratching the surface of how deep this issue is going to go. We are at the forefront of what's going to be very radical change. The legal system is going to have to think about all of this, but we don't really know what direction yet is going to take. Pascaline is raising some really good questions around that. Now, I do want to continue the conversation around this. I really would appreciate if you see cases that are coming up in this area. I would be interested in covering those. So please send those to me, and I'll be looking for you to send those and to give me your thoughts on that. Okay, so I'm about to shut this poll down, and then we'll take, we've done questions the whole night, but I'll take a question or two at the end. And I see I've got one from Stan. And this is a good point. Many of the answers to your questions depend upon the kinks, whether the kink can be eliminated from AI. If we can eliminate its current problems, then its uses seem to me to be unlimited, but that is a big if. And Stan, you're right that I think a lot of difference will be made with that. I personally think we have to put up a guardrail around the concept, not just on whether it's getting it all right yet, but even the concept that AI could judge humans, the concept that AI could testify. I think that's where the guardrail has to come. But I see exactly what you're saying, because it will one day be really cheap to have AI do $5,000 claims. And it will save money and it will be faster, and there will be a temptation to do that. So we will find out. It's even being used in mediation field. So I've been reading a little bit about that. All right, I'm going to shut down the poll. So go ahead and vote really quick. Rich Annie wants to know about the audience demographic, because younger people might be more receptive. Well, that's a really good point. That is a really good point. And to the extent we skew a little older, maybe there's another group out there that would be more excited, more interested in this, would be more willing to hand over power or control to AI. I think, though, that's exactly where we come in, because I think that's pretty dangerous. I think the idea that we hand to an algorithm the ability to judge humans is appalling. We need to be appalled at that, and we need to explain to a younger generation why. So just my opinion. But that is exactly why I want to talk about it, because I feel like this is so new. It's not like any one person has all the ideas here. I think we need conversation around this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Last chance, quick. Okay, and here is how you voted. 60% of you would not accept AI, even if it could eliminate backlog, even if it came at a cost. That would not influence you. But there is another 40% of you that either went with, it depends, 29% of you went there. And that probably goes into what Stan was talking about, which is those kinks aren't worked out yet. Let's see when they are. Let's make a decision then. And 11% of you said yes. Pascaline wanting to know, on the other side, could human judge AI? Oh, interesting question. I wonder what we would judge them for. That would be an interesting novel, Pascaline. We will definitely be interested in that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your talking through this with me. I've enjoyed it and enjoyed getting your thoughts and opinions. Don't forget to write me if you see a case or something like that. I really am curious and want to keep up with this. Thank you for watching the channel. If you haven't hit the like button, please do that. And I will see you in the next video, which will be Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern.